I have to say this as honestly as possible, even if it might leave you feeling confused. Believe it or not, there are people who call me in the middle of the night with just one burning question. If I eat eggs, will I have a stroke? This is not an exaggeration or an isolated incident. It reflects a silent fear that millions of Americans live with every single day because of what they've heard or read about eggs. Maybe you've come across statements claiming that even a single egg a day can raise your risk of heart disease, that the cholesterol in the yolk is the #1 enemy of your cardiovascular health, that once you're over the age of 60, you should avoid eggs completely, and the sooner the better. These warnings are everywhere, on morning news broadcasts, in mainstream health magazines, and even echoed by some doctors during office visits. But the real question we must ask is this: are any of these claims actually true?
Today, I want to clarify this entire issue once and for all, from the perspective of someone who has studied blood lipids for over 20 years and who has personally eaten 2 eggs every morning for more than a decade. This is not going to be one of those he said, she said debates based on headlines or hearsay. We're not going to rely on sensationalized media articles or outdated guidelines. Instead, I'm going to walk you through real data, peer-reviewed research, and clearly explained biological mechanisms so you can make your own informed decision. There's no need for fear, no need to avoid a food that, for centuries, was considered one of nature's most complete and nourishing sources of nutrition. What I'm about to share next may genuinely surprise you, because even some of the very studies that were once used to vilify eggs are now being re-examined, and many of them are telling a very different story. Did you know that your own body naturally produces about 3,000 milligrams of cholesterol every single day, even if you don't eat a single egg? That's roughly the amount of cholesterol found in 14 whole eggs. This is something most people don't realize, because for decades, especially since the 1980s, we've been taught to believe that cholesterol is a harmful substance that we should avoid at all costs. But that message has led to a widespread and dangerous misunderstanding. Cholesterol is not a poison. In fact, it is a critical structural component of every cell membrane in your body. It serves as the raw material your body uses to synthesize vital sex hormones such as estrogen and testosterone. It also plays an essential role in the production of vitamin D, as well as bile acids, which are necessary for the digestion and absorption of dietary fats and fat-soluble vitamins. Your liver, an organ with highly adaptive, self-regulating functions, is responsible for managing the majority of the cholesterol circulating in your system. When you consume more cholesterol from food, your liver naturally reduces its own production. Conversely, when your dietary intake is low, your liver compensates by making more. This dynamic process is known as cholesterol homeostasis, or the body's in-transit cholesterol balance.
Understanding this mechanism is key to unraveling decades of fear-based messaging about eggs and dietary cholesterol. The next sections will explore these truths more deeply, with the science to support them. This is not just theory, it is backed by science. In a comprehensive meta-analysis published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, researchers reviewed dozens of clinical trials and found that increasing dietary cholesterol intake from sources such as eggs had only a minimal impact on LDL levels, commonly referred to as bad cholesterol. At the same time, it was shown to raise HDL, the so-called good cholesterol. Even more importantly, the ratio of LDL to HDL, which is considered a far more reliable predictor of cardiovascular risk, remained largely unaffected in any harmful direction. Why does this matter, especially for individuals over the age of 60? Because as we age, the body increasingly depends on stable, essential building blocks to protect nerve cells, maintain hormonal balance, and repair tissues following inflammation or chronic disease. Many older adults, driven by fear of cholesterol, have spent years avoiding eggs, cutting out red meat, and consuming very low amounts of dietary fat. The result? Memory loss, chronic fatigue, declining testosterone levels, and in some cases, clinical depression. Let me be clear, I am not saying that all cholesterol is harmless, but if you are afraid of a single egg, which contains around 200 to 230 milligrams of cholesterol, while your liver is producing approximately 3,000 milligrams every day on its own, then the problem isn't the egg. The problem lies in our fundamental misunderstanding of cholesterol's true role in the human body. And that's only part of the story. What comes next is even more critical. Do eggs actually raise bad cholesterol, clog arteries, and trigger heart attacks? Or have we been misled for decades by flawed interpretations and outdated assumptions? I'm about to show you something that far too many people have overlooked. One of the most common questions I hear from patients is this: "Doctor, if I eat eggs every day, will my bad cholesterol go up?" At first glance, it may seem like a simple inquiry, but in reality, it reflects a deeply rooted fear, one that has been passed down across generations. This fear was born from early observational studies, shaped by misleading media campaigns, and cemented by public health recommendations that many experts today are now actively reevaluating. So, here is my direct answer. No, eating eggs, particularly as part of a balanced diet, does not significantly increase LDL cholesterol levels. In fact, it may even offer benefits for your heart health. A randomized controlled trial published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition involved 61 healthy individuals who were instructed to consume 2 eggs daily for a period of 5 weeks. The result? There was no significant increase in LDL, commonly labeled as bad cholesterol. On the contrary, HDL, the good cholesterol, showed a modest rise. More importantly, the LDL to HDL ratio, which is considered a far more reliable predictor of cardiovascular risk, remained unchanged in any harmful direction.
In fact, an even larger analysis involving nearly 2 million participants across multiple countries, published in the European Journal of Clinical Nutrition, revealed that consuming about 1 egg per day was not associated with an increased risk of cardiovascular disease or stroke. On the contrary, in several subgroups, moderate egg consumption was actually linked to a reduced risk of ischemic stroke and coronary artery disease. So, why do we still hear warnings that eggs clog arteries? The issue lies in how we interpret the data. Many earlier studies were observational in nature, meaning researchers simply asked participants about their dietary habits and then tracked disease outcomes over several years. The problem with this method is that it is highly prone to confounding variables. Individuals who eat more eggs may also be more likely to consume processed meats, smoke cigarettes, live sedentary lifestyles, or have a higher body mass index. If those factors are not properly controlled, the resulting data can create misleading associations that suggest a causal link where none exists. It's no different than saying people who use umbrellas are more likely to get wet simply because they're outside when it's raining. Correlation does not equal causation. And yet, this very misunderstanding has shaped public fear and dietary behavior for decades. It's also important to clarify a common misconception. Dietary cholesterol is not the same as blood cholesterol. The liver regulates both, and research shows that dietary intake contributes to only about 15 to 20% of total circulating cholesterol. Other, far more impactful factors include genetics, chronic stress, systemic inflammation, consumption of refined sugars, and intake of trans fats, all of which play a far greater role in elevating harmful LDL levels than dietary cholesterol ever could. And there's another key point that's often overlooked. Eggs are not just cholesterol bombs. They're rich in choline, a vital nutrient essential for brain health and liver function, as well as lutein and zeaxanthin, 2 powerful antioxidants that help protect the eyes from macular degeneration. You simply won't get those benefits from the refined carbohydrates that many people are encouraged to eat in place of eggs. You may have been led to believe that eggs were the reason you needed to take a statin drug, but the latest evidence tells a different story. It is actually diets high in added sugar, low in fiber, and lacking in physical activity that are the real drivers of metabolic dysfunction and cardiovascular disease. Eggs, when consumed mindfully and as a part of a balanced diet, are not only safe, they can be a powerful component of a smart, nutrient-rich lifestyle, especially for those over the age of 60. And now we come to the most important question of all. How many eggs per day is actually considered safe? Is 1 egg a day okay? What about 2? or even 4, the answer shouldn't come from vague advice or guesswork, but from rigorous scientific research. In the next section, I will walk you through the actual numbers based on data involving millions of participants from around the world.
This may be the part you've been waiting for. Doctor, how many eggs can I safely eat each day, especially now that I'm over 60? This is not just a common question, it's one that many older adults receive conflicting or non-specific answers to from their healthcare providers. In many cases, seniors are told things like, the fewer eggs the better, or are advised to avoid the yolk altogether. But the scientific truth is far more nuanced. Let's first look at what the evidence actually says. In a 2013 meta-analysis published in the BMJ, researchers reviewed data from 17 observational studies involving over 3 million individuals. The conclusion was crystal clear. Consuming 1 egg per day was not associated with an increased risk of cardiovascular disease or stroke. In fact, in some population groups, particularly among Asians, daily egg consumption was linked to a lower risk of ischemic stroke. Another major study, published in 2021 in the journal Nutrients, analyzed data from nearly 2 million people worldwide. The findings were consistent. Consuming around 4 eggs per week was associated with a modest reduction in cardiovascular risk, and eating 1 egg per day showed no significant negative effect. However, when intake exceeded 6 eggs per week, especially among older American men, there was a slight uptick in the risk of heart failure. While not drastic, it's something to be mindful of, particularly for those with existing heart conditions or on cardiac medications. A separate study, remarkable because it focused on American military veterans and included hundreds of thousands of participants, found that every additional half egg consumed per day was associated with a modest increase in stroke risk, approximately 11%. But when researchers adjusted for confounding variables such as total fat intake, type of dietary protein, physical activity levels, smoking status, and pre-existing health conditions, the association disappeared. This underscores a critical point. It's not the egg itself that's dangerous, but the context in which it's consumed and the lifestyle that surrounds it. So, what do I recommend for people over 60? If you are generally healthy, have no history of cardiovascular disease, are not on statin therapy, and follow a balanced lifestyle, then consuming 1 egg per day is entirely reasonable and safe. This intake level is supported by multiple controlled studies and is widely accepted among nutrition experts. In fact, for those following high-protein eating plans, such as ketogenic or low-carb diets, up to 2 eggs per day may be appropriate, provided that total dietary cholesterol remains within a manageable range across the whole meal. In short, the fear around eggs has been largely exaggerated. For older adults, eggs can still be a nutrient-dense, convenient, and heart-friendly part of a smart modern diet.
If you have underlying health conditions, such as coronary artery disease, a history of stroke, or are currently taking lipid-lowering medications, you can still include eggs in your diet. However, it's best to limit intake to about 3 to 4 eggs per week and prioritize cooking methods that are low in added fat, such as boiling, steaming, or oil-free pan cooking. The most important message is this: you do not need to eliminate eggs entirely, which is a common misconception believed to be the safest option. That belief is not only outdated, but also nutritionally limiting. A question I'm frequently asked is, "Doctor, should I eat the yolk or just the egg white?" The short answer is, eat the whole egg. The yolk contains the majority of the egg's valuable nutrients, including choline, lutein, vitamin D, and iron, all of which are critical for brain function, eye health, immune support, and energy metabolism. The egg white, by contrast, is primarily a source of protein. When you discard the yolk, you are missing out on the most nutrient-dense portion of the egg. Unless you've been given a specific medical directive from your doctor due to a rare condition, there is no valid reason to fear the yolk.
Another key point that deserves emphasis is the method of preparation. For older adults, gentler cooking techniques should be prioritized. Boiled, steamed, or dry-fried eggs without added oils are preferable. If you enjoy scrambled eggs, using a small amount of real butter is a healthier alternative to using heavily refined vegetable oils. And always remember, eating eggs as part of a balanced breakfast with vegetables, whole grains, and healthy fats can support better digestion and nutrient absorption while minimizing the risk of bloating or sluggish digestion. Ultimately, the right dose isn't just about the number of eggs you eat. It's about your overall lifestyle, including your dietary pattern, physical activity level, and degree of systemic inflammation. One egg alone doesn't cause a stroke, but a sedentary lifestyle, high sugar intake, low fiber diet, and chronic sleep deprivation certainly can. That's what you need to remember each morning as you lift your spoon to enjoy that first bite of a soft-boiled egg. So if you're wondering whether it's okay to eat 1 or even 2 eggs per day after the age of 60, the answer is yes, you absolutely can, and in many cases, you probably should. Of course, this depends on knowing your body, staying in touch with your physician if you have health conditions, and most importantly, not letting outdated fears take away one of the most nutritious, affordable, and accessible foods in your diet. I've had many patients say to me, "Doctor, I'm not afraid of the cholesterol in eggs, but every time I eat them, I feel bloated or sluggish, like the food just sits in my stomach." This is a very common complaint, especially among older adults. But it doesn't mean that eggs are harmful. It simply reflects the way our digestion changes with age and how the preparation method of the egg can make a real difference.
First, it's important to understand that eggs, especially the yolks, are rich in fats and proteins. These macronutrients require sufficient digestive enzymes, particularly lipase and protease, produced by the pancreas, to be properly broken down. When you're young, your body easily adjusts and secretes the needed enzymes on demand. But after age 60, your stomach acid levels tend to decline. Bile flow becomes slower, and pancreatic enzyme output may not be as efficient as it once was. As a result, you may experience slower digestion, bloating, acid reflux, or a heavy, uncomfortable feeling after eating rich meals, especially those high in protein and fat, like eggs. So how can you improve this? One of the first factors to consider is how the eggs are prepared. Hard-boiled eggs, cooked thoroughly but not overdone, are often easier to digest than fried, pan-seared, or heavily oiled omelets. When eggs are fried in vegetable oils, especially reused or refined oils, the fat molecules undergo chemical changes and produce oxidized compounds that not only burden digestion, but may also increase inflammatory responses in the stomach lining. Raw or soft-boiled eggs, though popular in certain diets, can cause bloating in older adults because the proteins remain partially unaltered, requiring the body to produce extra enzymes to process them. For a digestive system that's already more sluggish with age, this becomes an unnecessary strain. A small clinical study published in the Journal of Nutrition and Aging showed that when eggs were consumed alongside fiber-rich foods such as leafy greens, avocado, or whole grain oats, gastric emptying time was shortened and feelings of bloating were significantly reduced compared to eating eggs alone or with refined bread. Another way to support digestion is by taking a tablespoon of diluted apple cider vinegar or a glass of warm lemon water before meals. These natural acids can help stimulate your body's own stomach acid production. If you're particularly sensitive to eggs, you might also benefit from using a mild digestive enzyme supplement, especially when eating eggs for breakfast. And don't forget the basics. Chew thoroughly, eat slowly, and avoid having eggs at the very end of your meal. These 3 simple rules are often ignored, yet they make a big difference. Eating too quickly or finishing your meal with eggs after already consuming high-fat dishes can overwhelm your stomach and lead to that familiar post-meal heaviness or bloating. If you regularly feel bloated after eating eggs, consider adjusting your cooking method and food pairings before thinking about cutting them out.
In most cases, the issue isn't the egg itself, but when, how, and with what you're eating it.
I often remind my patients, feeling full for hours is not always a good sign, especially if it comes with fatigue or stomach heaviness after breakfast. Eggs are complete food, but they must be consumed at the right time, in the right way, and aligned with your individual digestive needs, particularly after age 60. We've all heard a lot about eggs over the years, and much of it has been overly simplified or fear-based. But as you've now seen from the evidence presented, eggs are not the enemy of heart health that they've been made out to be. In fact, when eaten appropriately, they can be one of the most nutrient-dense and sustainable foods in a senior's diet. A single egg provides nearly all the fat-soluble vitamins, easily absorbed protein, choline for brain function, and lutein for eye protection. They do not significantly raise harmful LDL cholesterol, as earlier observational studies once suggested. More importantly, your body has its own internal cholesterol regulating mechanism, something that most people were never fully educated about. What I hope you take away from this video is not a fixed number, but the confidence to make decisions based on your real health status and personal needs. For some, 1 egg per day is ideal. For others, 3 to 4 per week may be more suitable. What matters is understanding your own body, maintaining a healthy lifestyle, and not letting outdated fears dictate your food choices. If what I've shared today has helped you gain clarity or brought peace of mind to someone in your family, please consider sharing this video. Not everyone gets the chance to hear a calm, science-based, and honest explanation about a topic that has been misunderstood and distorted for too long.